I usually paint my canvases black, for instance, and as it's drying, the various strokes that I have used will begin to form a picture to me, and all the things that are tumbling through my mind at all times will start to coalesce, and something will come, and I will see it before the paint is dry on that bottom coat. On 9/10, I wrote a poem about two twins falling, and then on 9/11, we all know what happened. I usually sign myself as Thomas the Younger.
His name is Thomas Washington.
My father is Thomas the Elder.
He's most known for his painting, his activism, but he's also a father, a philosopher, and most importantly, an observer of life.
Junior doesn't have any music.
It didn't take long to learn there were 50 shades to Thomas Washington as we sat and chatted in a noisy coffee house in Columbia, South Carolina.
And because I'm an autodidact, at some juncture I started going farther and farther back with my reading material until finally I was in ancient Europe where they used terminologies, and
Right.
Rome and so forth, like Cato the Elder, etc. And also, Junior doesn't speak enough to my mind of the impact that the party who gave you their name has. And for my father to be such a source of not only talent but also misery for me, I think to a real degree I'm always unpacking that, I'm always examining our dynamic. And I think it's kind of a subtle reminder to myself, that I'm his son, that we're in an interactive space like that at all times, in my work, outside of it, whatever. So I wanted to say Junior without saying Junior.
That's cool.
A lot of people tell me that I'm a creature of another time. They say you're born both. You're either born too early, too late, something. You're not from here. And as a matter of fact, there was an old flame of mine who used to call me Mr. Poets of Old. Like that was how she referred to
Right.
me. And I think that people gave me the impression over time as well that my name might want to reflect that. So all these things work together, I think, to bring me to that pseudonym. Water was one of my pseudonyms when I was a rapper, which I still am. No one ever stops being a rapper.
Right.
As a rapper, I'm sorry. If you have that bug, it's always going to gnaw at you. So that was one of them, or H2O, which is the same.
Right. And what's the significance of
Flow. Pure and unadulterated.
So you used it when you did poetry as well, because that's
Sometimes
related to
exactly.
rap.
There was a
Your
season of
cousins.
overlap, definitely, where I definitely used it. I think around the Tranquility days, there used to be this spot called Tranquility in West Columbia. Thomas Tyndale, I may have done a book on Amazon under Thomas Tyndale, I'm not sure.
Gotcha.
Tyndale's my middle name,
Okay.
so I spelled it the archaic way instead of the way that my grandmother, whoever came up with it.
Of course you do.
And, I'd have to be, Mad Waters, which is my stream of consciousness. So I will sometimes just not be able to stop writing compulsively, and they're all streams of consciousness. A lot of them are lyrical content, but not, it's more Saul Williams than Method Man,
Okay.
but with a lot of Method and Reggie Noble, the greatest rappers ever, with a lot of his aesthetic, So anyway, I have a lot of names.
Okay.
My father was doodling one day at the kitchen table, and I was fascinated watching this image come to be underneath this, I believe it was a Bic pen. I was startled, and on top of that, how, if you forgive the pun, how he was making this image on top of the blue lines of the basic piece of paper. I was like, how is he making this happen? And he drew it and he forgot about it, I could tell. I took the piece and I began to copy it. And until I got to a place where I felt like I was close to what he'd done, I spent every waking hour doing this.
Wow.
And that's when it began. And I started with a pen, just like he did. Now what this forced me to do, of course, was to make less mistakes and also to learn to plan, which comes to the same, really. But also, if I did make a mistake, to innovate. Sometimes I would be drawing a picture, mess it up, turn it upside down, and wait until something popped out at me. I still use this facility today. I usually paint my canvases black, for instance, and as it's drying, the various strokes that I have used will begin to form a picture to me, and all the things that are tumbling through my mind at all times will start to coalesce, and something will come. And I will see it before the paint is dry on that bottom coat. And that is how all of my pictures begin, since the first time I picked up a brush. Every single one of my sons has shown that they want to do it, and quite frankly, all of them have shown that they probably will be able to if they stick to it. Yeah, it was inevitable. They would be drawing just like I did with my dad, and I really feel like it's sort of both, genetically, epigenetically, as we're speaking of art being a way of teaching. I think that that's something that's in our line, so yeah, they picked up the bug.
How old is he? When did he start showing it?
Now.
Okay.
He started showing an interest officially, like to be able to say it or show it in overt ways, probably 2 years ago, around the age of 3. But here's the thing, like his sister, Indigo, she's already trying to paint. And she says,
Hey, the little one I saw?
Yeah. I believe that an artist's first true talent is to see. You see both what is present and also the nuances thereof, and past that into the subtext. And in my case, I back up to the meta view, where I look at how not only what's happening is unfolding, but also how it is connected to the entire human story. Or the Earth story is more how I think of it. So it was inevitable, therefore, because I have that sort of acuity, that when I saw Michael Brown laying in the street and saw what that meant, while I was looking at his body, what it meant about our society, that I won't say I've been lying to myself about it, but I just definitely hadn't kept it in front of me. I think we all kind of have to function sometimes without thinking about certain things, of course. So he put it in front of me in a way that was like, okay, this is not over. As a matter of fact, perhaps it's never really truly begun. And that's what awakens me. Because every moment, whether we're not saying anything or we're saying something, are contributing to the dialogue. Whether you're abstaining your vote, as it were, or whether or not you're pitching in. And so, to me, I knew that I was always meant to speak. Or at least I've been told that since childhood. So I spoke on it, and I never stopped. While we were gathered, I remember meeting her eyes. She was standing inside of the Capitol building, at the top of the stairs behind the glass. We were all there, and we've been there all day. And I was a little distant from the crowd, and I just crossed my arms and looked at her for about 10 minutes as the drones, like, we're not going anywhere. I just smiled. And I'm sure others who were beside me all that time had an equal impact to her. She saw that mass, and she felt the temperature of the day. I mean, how could you not? I think really the United States woke up Michael Brown.
His life.
I will say this about my activism. There is what is seen and there's what's unseen, and I will not go into some of that, but I will say this. I think that if a fight is worth making, it's worth making on all fronts. And I'm saying this because there's a lot of factionalism, and always has been, when it comes to reform versus revolt versus revolution. Revolution itself comes from an ancient Latin term, volvere, which means to turn, to cycle. But we don't want to actually bring it back around to anything that's ever been before, so revolution may not even be the best word for it. We need transformation. And so, in that spirit, I say, there's never been a King versus Malcolm moment for me. It's always been Malcolm and King.
Right.
And on Thursday, it might be Malcolm who's right. For me. And on Friday, it might be King who's right. For me. And for you. And you have to learn which moment that you're in. I'm not going to say I wouldn't throw a rock. I'm not going to say I haven't. What I am going to say is that we have to choose our level of involvement, but never, ever, ever, ever castigate your brothers and sisters in the same humanitarian fight. If what you're here for is to make a difference for truth, then in truth, I'm on a human spectrum, a humane spectrum, and that which has a toll in human life is automatically my enemy and yours,
Right.
because you breathe.
The zombie apocalypse. Do you believe in it? Do you believe it's here? Do you believe it's coming?
So what, a bona fide zombie apocalypse?
Your perspective of how would you define it?
Okay.
And I really wanted to ask you this question because of some of your artwork. I was like, this dude trying to identify our alien family. Don't think I don't know what time that is. Okay.
I'll say this, I'm one of those who likes to entertain the notion of the zombie apocalypse because it resets the clock in a very interesting way. It makes things simpler. It's survive or not survive, right? But, figuratively speaking, I think we definitely have the zombie part. I think we're in the zombie prequel. The apocalypse has not yet come, but it's on its way. The apocalypse is nigh, as they say.
Right.
I really have enjoyed the lens that's been held up to toxic masculinity, as it said.
Say that again, please.
Toxic masculinity, cis heteropatriarchy, these things, these buzzwords now, they really made me look both way outside but also deep inside and seeing how those default mecha make me the undead too, unless I'm careful. You know, even my interactions with my own partner have taken on different contexts for me because part of me is guarding against me. Default mechanisms that may come up in me, you know? And I mean, I'm one of those people I can't stop.
Is that not growth?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's like, it's ongoing growth. And like I said, it's my way of fighting off the enemy. Because to me, to just default to what is easy or normal or what the zeitgeist is, to default to that is the death, is the zombification.
Do you see commercialization of black culture becoming more prominent in our local sphere?
I will say my jury's out on that because the conversation has begun with the Amplify Columbia that's being put on down by One Columbia. There is conversation being had on a bureaucratic level. As a matter of fact, the consultant was brought in to look at our culture, as it were. Okay, I'll give you an example actually, and it has something to do with toxic masculinity. And you know what? Ironically, as of this morning, I can actually give this example in good conscience because the party has shown me that I was right to do what I did. When toxic masculinity first started to be bandied about a year or so back, a friend of mine posted something about, to me it was one of those from the hip type articles where somebody was just freestyling and making a correlation where there was barely one there, etc. But they said, a man who does not cook is practicing a microaggression. It's a form of toxic masculinity. And I came on the thread, and it was a thread filled with, you know, black feminists, as they're called now. I don't think that's a good term, but whatever. I think the only feminists are black, but whatever. That being said, I was like, okay, I think that there are a lot of skill sets that are kept from people by default within the system, but also sometimes consciously. I think that even something as much as something like housekeeping or being able to cook, for instance, is one of those things that has come from, say, the inability to be trained. My parents busted their butts. Nobody was keeping house. We were McDonald's all my life. Then I come on to this, relationship, and I'm working at a factory now. I barely have time to do anything, let alone go to YouTube and learn how to make big chicken. I said, I'm not saying that that's never the case, but what I am saying is I think we have to be careful because I think that there is a different issue that this reflects as well. I think that when it comes to knowledge bases, there's a paucity of that. There's a paucity of certain types of training, home and experience. Heck, I believe home ec is gone now, for instance, right? So, of course, not everybody took that, but it's gone. as a course, and so there's going to be a trickle down effect from that. And they came for me, of course.
Do you cook?
I cook very well.
Do you cook? I didn't say how well do you cook. Do you cook?
I say limits. No, I'll say this. I consider cooking an art. And always have. I didn't need Iron Chef to say this.